Hi guys, I'm Ryan with Metz Machines, and today I want to talk a little bit about some of the most common questions we get asked when it comes to buying a Firewood processor. One thing that we get asked quite a bit is not necessarily which processor is the best one, which one makes the most sense, but sometimes we just get people calling and asking, should I buy a Firewood processor? And there's a lot of different reasons to buy a Firewood processor, and there's reasons not to buy a Firewood processor, depending on what your situation is. But today I want to talk about 5 different reasons why you should look at buying a Firewood processor and what the benefits of owning a Firewood processor are. So starting off with number 1 is it's a lot faster to use a Firewood processor. This one's kind of the most obvious, so I wanted to get it out of the way first. But producing firewood with a Firewood processor is going to be the fastest way to produce firewood. It's, you're less handling, things are moving through the machine a lot faster. Most processors can do about 1/4 to 2/4 of firewood per hour. At least our processors that's what we rate them at. You can get a lot higher than that if you get up to larger machines. So depending on your needs, you can be producing a lot of firewood very, very quickly. As a personal anecdote, we have a cabin up north, and we have a little log splitter there. And it takes me 4 hours to do what takes me 30 minutes to do with a Firewood processor. So time is valuable. Speed is very important when it comes to producing firewood, and a Firewood processor is going to be the best way to get your money, get both your time back to focus on other things as well as produce firewood a lot faster than you would with other methods. Number 2 is you're going to be producing a lot more consistent firewood with a Firewood processor. Now, when you're processing wood by hand or with a log splitter or any of those methods, you're still bucking the wood by hand. You're still making those cuts by hand. And it is possible to get some pretty consistent results with there. I have seen like the tricks where, you put the rod on a chainsaw bar to measure it out, and that way you get the same cuts, but you can only do the first bit of the cut. You have to come back afterwards and finish that cut. And then you're still processing it. There's a lot of extra handling involved there. With most Firewood processors, there is some type of way to measure the logs as you're cutting them. With ours, there's a hard mechanical stop to make sure you get the same cut length. Some use like hanging antennas and things like that, which are gonna help. Mechanical stop, I think, is the best way to do it. You want a processor that can stop it and make sure you have consistent cuts. But the reason consistent cuts are good is for a few reasons. One is it's easier to handle. It's gonna be easier to sort, it's gonna be easier to stack, it's gonna be easier to bundle, which are all things that you're doing if you're either drying wood or if you're if you're bundling it and you wanna sell it to gas stations or customers that way. Along with that is it looks better. Having a presentable product is important when it comes to selling anything, including firewood. If you have a pile of logs and they're all sticking out odds and ends and it just looks like a mishmash of scrap wood, people are going to have a lower perception of that than if you have a nice stack of logs, all the same cut length, all split nicely. So consistency is important. And at number 3 is it's a lot easier to produce firewood with a Firewood processor. Again, this kind of ties into number 1 where it's faster, but there's a lot less handling when you're using a Firewood process. You're not handling them at each stage like you would if you're doing it by hand or with a splitter. And because of that, it's going to be easier on your body. Now, I know people are going to say doing firewood by hand is a good workout, and it is. I'm not going to discount that. But if you are a business owner and you are trying to sell firewood, whether or not it's a good workout is going to be more of a secondary concern, unless you're doing it for fun or it's something that's more on the weekend and it's it's a way for you to make, you're just doing it kind of because you have the logs and it's a good workout, gets you outside, then by all means keep it as your workout routine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking to produce large amounts of firewood, you need to split 100, 200 cord, 300 cord of firewood a year. A processor is going to make that a lot easier on you and your body. You're not going to get as exhausted. I mean, even if you're doing it by hand, you're going to need to take time to rest. It's going to be tiring. It's a really hot day. It's going to be more exhausting. It's important to stay hydrated regardless, but you're going to be sweating even more if you're doing a lot of manual labor, especially in like sunnier days or sunnier weather. That's actually why we have a lot of people who produce firewood in the fall months and the winter months. Even people who use a processor use those months instead for producing firewood. But it's going to be easier on your body. And number 4 is safety. Firewood processors can be a very safe way of producing firewood. This is something that I'm going to tailor more towards the Yappa Firewood processors, kind of as a personal plug-in too, because I think that they do feature some of the best safety features really on the market. The TP Silver branded Firewood processors are very, very safe. When you open the hood, the hydraulics disable. This is something that people don't realize when they watch a lot of our videos on like Facebook and the shorts that we post. they don't realize that those hydraulics are turned off, and they get nervous. And with these machines we have those safeties in place so that you don't need to be nervous. I think it's important to treat the machine like it is operational at all times, just for the sake of safety, but at the same time, it's nice to have those safety features in place. Now, the reason safety is important is for a couple reasons. One, for personal reasons. I want to keep my fingers and my hands where they are. I've been hitting the leg with a chainsaw in the past. It wasn't fun, didn't go very deep, thankfully. I still have the leg, but safety is something that's important, and I want to be able to keep all of my fingers into old age. So safety is important for personal reasons. You value your body and your safety, I would imagine. Number two is if you are an employer and you have employees running machines, it's very important that they are safe when they are working at your location and at your place of business, because as an employer, you are liable for those employees. So having a machine that is safe to run is important. That's where there's OSHA, there's a lot of different regulations in place that dictate worker safety, and as a firewood producer, having a machine that is safe to operate is important. And so this is something that's going to be a very varying level of priority for different people. Some people are more comfortable with risk than other people. Of course, if you're using chainsaws, there's always going to be some level of risk. You just have to be willing to accept that. I mean, that's the nature of what it is. So it's something that might not be as important for other people, but if safety is something that is important to you, then safety with a fire processor is something that you might not see with other methods of producing firewood. Again, you have guards in place, you have a lot of these measures in place, especially with the Apple machines that keep you safe. And number 5 is fire processors are actually a more cost-effective way of producing firewood. Something we get comments a lot about on, for people who aren't familiar with fire processors, is they'll make the comment, this is why gas station bundles are so expensive. And that's actually the opposite of what a fire processor does. Fire processors are designed to make firewood faster. That's their purpose. And firewood is an economy of scale. And for people who aren't necessarily aware what the term means, it means that as you produce more products, you're able to offer a better price. If it takes you 3 hours to produce a cord of firewood, you're gonna have to charge more than if it takes you 30 minutes to produce a cord of firewood. That's how that works. You want to get paid for your time. Your time is very valuable, which goes back to point 1, it's faster. Because of that, if you're able to produce a cord or 2 cord every hour, which is what we rate our machines at, you're able to get more value out of that wood. You're not spending all your money on labor. You're spending it, on the machine, but the machine can get paid off. And once the machine's paid off, you have profit. And for us here, as an example, it costs us about $110 per cord of wood that we get delivered here. And these are logs that are perfect for our machines. It's $110, we're not spending, and that's a little bit more expensive than what you might get in other areas. And that is something that's unique to our market. Your market might be different, but $110 per cord, we're gonna round up and say it's $40 for fuel and time / labor to process that in the firewood. So that means $150. If you're able to sell a cord of loose stacked firewood or very minimally handled firewood for $250 in your market, that's $100 in gains. You've made $100 on that cord of firewood. And if you can do that, if you can make 4 cord a day, which is running it for 4 hours a day, that's half the day, that's $400 in that day. So if you are an individual who has land and who decides to invest in a processor, and you're doing this where you're running it for 10, 20 hours a week, you're producing 10 times 100, that's $1,000, 10 times, and you're just going up from there. And that's the lowest return that we're talking about. That's loose stack, no handling. If you're doing delivery, if you're bundling, if you're doing, specialty woods, if you have like cherry logs or your hickory logs and you're selling to people who are using them for barbecue and grilling, or restaurants, that number isn't set at just $250 a cord. It can go up very, very fast, especially if you're bundling where, 1 cord can give you 100 bundles. That's $600 right there. Your costs go up. So it's actually a lot more cost effective to use a fire processor. And as you produce that, you're able to get your money's worth out of it very, very quickly if you're in a market where you're able to turn over product. And that's something that I don't think people realize. I think people have a hard time imagining scale, especially if they're not in the industry already. But those are 5 reasons why you might want to look at buying a fire processor. These are things that not necessarily every processor is going to match, but it's a good starting point for the discussion. If you fit any of those kind of criteria or mindset, then there starts to be an argument for buying a processor. It's not something that everyone's going to need, but it is something that if you are producing firewood, I do think the investment is worth it. If you have any questions or comments, or maybe you have a different reason why you decided to buy a fire processor, please let us know below. We always like hearing our feedback from from both fans and customers. We want to hear from you guys. But as always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.